This is the story about the devil on Dunbar Street. Please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And now, enjoy the story and have a good night. On October 2, 2013, 17-year-old Mallory Klein vanished on her walk home from school in the quiet Ohio town of Belwick. She never made it to her house on Dunbar Street, a 15-minute walk she'd done for years. The weather had been clear. Her route predictable. She wasn't texting. Her phone last pinged at 3:41 p.m., just 2 blocks from her house. By 6 p.m., her mother, Janice, filed a missing persons report. Belwick PD searched her common routes, the shortcut behind the auto garage, the trail by the community park, the old Lutheran cemetery. No signs. No scuffle. No witnesses. No Mallory. A week passed. Then too, by Halloween, the flyers had curled at the edges, fluttering uselessly on telephone poles. Candlelight vigils were held. The town prayed. Volunteers combed through nearby woods. Still nothing. Her case went cold. Then, in March of 2014, 6 months later, a hiker found a muddy, torn piece of plaid fabric deep in the woods bordering Belwick's industrial zone. Forensics matched it to Mallory's jacket. Nearby, buried beneath a shallow pile of brush, was her phone, cracked screen, dead battery. Inside the cracked casing was a microSD card. On it, a single 47-second video clip. The footage showed Mallory, tied to a wooden chair in what looked like a basement. She was gagged but alive. A man's voice behind the camera whispered, "She won't be alone much longer." The video ended with heavy breathing and the sound of a door creaking shut. The video sent shockwaves through the investigation. Mallory had been alive, at least for a time, and held somewhere near Belwick. But the clip offered few clues. There were no identifiable markings, no windows, no reflections. Just bare concrete, flickering light, and a rusted water heater in the corner. The voice wasn't recognizable, low, measured, with no accent. Digital forensics revealed the clip had been recorded on October 3, a day after Mallory disappeared. No geolocation metadata remained. The SD card was a generic brand, sold at dozens of stores statewide. The FBI was looped in. Behavioral analysts suspected a serial predator, methodical, patient, and deeply familiar with the area. Someone who knew how to avoid detection. Agents began pulling records of sex offenders, parolees, and known stalkers living within a 30-mile radius. They interviewed mechanics, janitors, and former custodians, anyone who might have access to a secluded basement space. One promising lead came from a former Belwick High teacher who had reported an odd encounter months earlier, a man loitering behind the school with a telephoto lens, claiming to be a freelance photographer. He'd vanished when confronted, his vehicle, a blue 1999 Ford Econoline van. No plates. No registration. That van would become central to the next breakthrough, and the next horror. 3 weeks after the video surfaced, a gas station attendant on Route 41 called in a tip. A blue van had been parked behind their lot for nearly 3 days. It matched the description. Security footage confirmed it. Same model, same paint scratches along the passenger side. The van had no plates, just like in the teacher's report. Inside, investigators found tools, zip ties, duct tape, and empty food wrappers. In the back, a stained mattress lay atop a plywood platform. Fibers pulled from the mattress matched the torn plaid fabric found months earlier. Hidden under the floorboard was a spiral notebook. Most pages were blank, but some were filled with careful, meticulous handwriting, entries about obedience, experiments, and training time logs. One entry read, "MK has improved eye contact. Reacts less to isolation. Still resists food restriction, MK, Mallory Klein." A fingerprint on the back cover came back with a match. It belonged to Elliot Graves, a 41-year-old former psychiatric orderly from nearby Dayton. He'd lost his license in 2009 after a patient accused him of prolonged confinement and physical intimidation. Police raided Graves' last known address, a foreclosed farmhouse on the outskirts of New Bremen. What they found there was worse than anyone expected. The farmhouse was crumbling, broken windows, a collapsed porch, walls pocked with mold. Graves hadn't lived there in years, but something told investigators it hadn't been abandoned long. The air inside was stale but not dead. There were signs of recent activity: food wrappers, candle stubs, a rusted space heater plugged into a portable generator. In the basement, beneath rotting floorboards, they found a hatch covered by a loose rug and 2 crates. It led down into a chamber that hadn't appeared on any floor plans, a hand-dug bunker. 6 feet below the surface, the air was cold, damp, and nearly lightless. The room was 8 feet by 8. Concrete lined. No windows. 1 outlet. 1 cot bolted to the floor. 1 camera bolted to the ceiling. A chain attached to a corner ring. Faint scratches covered the walls, tally marks, symbols, letters. A small metal tray in the corner held a hairbrush, cracked mirror, and what looked like a food log. The initials MK appeared again, scribbled next to meal portions and times, but Mallory wasn't there. DNA tests on hair and blood samples confirmed she had been. Investigators estimated she'd been held there for at least 2 months. The timeline fit the notebook entries, but by December 2013, 3 months after her disappearance, the bunker had gone quiet. Had Graves moved her? Killed her? Or was there another location? Then, from the house's attic, they recovered a single item that would redirect the case: a photo album, but not of Mallory, of other girls. The photo album contained 23 images, all Polaroids. Some dated back nearly a decade. Each showed a different young woman, some bound, some asleep, others simply staring blankly into the camera. On the back of each photo was a date and a pair of initials. HS. TM. AM. LM. Mallory's initials, MK, were the last entry. Only one girl had a full name written: Tara Milbank, February 2009. That name triggered a memory for one of the FBI agents. Tara had gone missing from a truck stop in Springfield, Ohio, over a decade ago. She was 19. It had been written off as a runaway. Her case had never been linked to Graves, but now, the FBI began pulling cold cases, disappearances of young women from Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana. A terrifying pattern emerged: all aged 16 to 22, all last seen near rest stops, shopping centers, or schools. All gone without a trace. Over a span of 11 years, the working theory shifted. Elliot Graves wasn't just a predator who had abducted Mallory. He was a serial abductor. Possibly a killer. And the meticulous notes and controlled environment suggested something deeper: obsession layered with experimentation. Still, no bodies had been found. No clear evidence of murder. Then a forensic team discovered a half-burned receipt from a hardware store under a pile of insulation in the attic. The date, December 9, 2013. The item, concrete mix. 6 bags. The store was 2 miles from an abandoned well outside Belwick. The well had once belonged to a long-defunct dairy farm on the outskirts of town. It had been filled in the early 90s, but locals said the cap was unstable. A few teens had used it for dares and urban legends. No one had touched it in years. The FBI arrived with a team of cadaver dogs and a mini excavator. The cap was removed, revealing a 30-foot drop into packed soil. Over 2 days, they dug carefully, layer by layer, uncovering debris, rusted tools, and, finally, bone fragments. By the end of the week, the excavation yielded remains from at least 3 individuals. 2 skulls, a jawbone, and partial femurs. 1 skull bore a clean fracture above the left temple. Dental records confirmed the first identity: Tara Milbank. Mallory's DNA, however, was not present, which meant one of 2 things: she wasn't there, or she was still alive. The media caught fire. Serial killer in Belwick. National news outlets descended on the town. Graves was still at large. The FBI issued a nationwide alert. Tips poured in, then a woman came forward. She claimed she'd seen Graves 2 weeks earlier, in a roadside diner in Missouri. He hadn't been alone, he was with a girl who looked terrified. Her name was Francine Moore, a waitress at the Highway Lantern Diner outside Rolla, Missouri. She'd waited on hundreds of travelers, but the man she saw in late March stuck in her memory. Creepy polite, she said. Like someone who practiced manners in front of a mirror. The girl with him was young, pale, and visibly shaken. She barely spoke. When Francine asked if she wanted something besides water, the man interrupted, "She's fine." What struck Francine most wasn't the silence, it was the way the girl looked at the ketchup bottle, as if searching for help in the label. The man paid in cash and left no name, but security footage captured the pair. The girl's face was partially obscured. But Francine insisted it was the same one she saw later on the news, Mallory Klein. Graves had grown a beard and wore glasses. Still, facial recognition confirmed a 94% match. He was using an alias, David Holtz. Credit card records under that name traced to an RV rental 2 weeks earlier, picked up in Kentucky. The plates were fake. But he'd left fingerprints on the diner glass, confirming the ID. A manhunt swept through Missouri and neighboring states. Rest stops were watched. Checkpoints set. Graves, or Holtz, had gone dark again, but then he made a mistake. He checked into a campground near the Ozarks. Alone, a park ranger remembered the van. Reported it, by the time law enforcement arrived. The campsite was empty, but they weren't too late. The RV was found deep in the trees, tires half buried in mud. The interior reeked of mildew and gasoline. Inside were ropes, notebooks, and audio cassettes labeled with women's names. But no Graves. Agents fanned out through the woods. They found her half a mile away, barefoot, shivering, curled under a moss-covered log. She didn't speak. Her eyes darted, her breathing shallow. Her wrists bore rope burns, and her cheek was bruised. But she was alive. It was Mallory. At the hospital, it took days before she could recount anything. When she did, her voice trembled. He made me memorize phrases. Sit still for hours. I wasn't allowed to blink unless he said I could. She'd been drugged, confined, and constantly recorded, told she was part of a reconditioning experiment. When Graves realized authorities were closing in, he made her hike into the woods while he packed the RV. She managed to slip away in the confusion. Her escape was nothing short of miraculous. In her fragmented recollection, she described other women. One was named Lacey. Another, Juniper. Some were obedient, others failed. The tapes recovered from the RV confirmed it. Graves had been abducting for over a decade. Conditioning, experimenting, recording, and now, he was running. With Mallory safe, the FBI launched an intensive manhunt. Graves had ditched the RV, stolen a sedan from a neighboring town, and was believed to be heading west. The media blitz made anonymity impossible. His face was everywhere. Still, he eluded capture for nearly 3 weeks. Finally, a break came from a Border Patrol agent in New Mexico. Graves had tried to cross into Mexico near Columbus, using forged documents. When asked to step out of his vehicle, he bolted. A short chase ended in a desert ditch. He drew a small knife. Officers tackled him before he could use it. Elliot Graves was arrested and flown back to Ohio. He refused to speak. No confession. No plea. But the physical evidence was overwhelming. The bunker, the journal, the well, the tapes, the photos. At least 7 women were now confirmed victims. 3 sets of remains were identified. Others are still unknown. At trial, Mallory testified from behind a privacy screen. Her voice was steady. He tried to erase me. But I remember who I am. The jury returned a verdict in 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Graves was sentenced to life in federal prison without parole, but some wounds never close. Mallory Klein changed her name and relocated out of state with her family. She rarely speaks publicly, though she did one interview in 2017, in which she said, "I survived. That doesn't mean I'm the same." Belwick tries not to talk about Dunbar Street anymore. The house was demolished in 2015. The well was sealed with concrete. But flowers still appear at the base of the nearest oak tree, especially every October. Elliot Graves remains incarcerated in Florence ADX, the nation's highest security prison. Psychiatrists call his pathology ritual predatory dissociation. Others call him evil. What haunts investigators most isn't what was found, it's what might still be missing. Several initials in the album were never matched to names. The number of victims remains uncertain. Graves kept no full list. No confessions. No remorse, and the tapes? Only 13 were recovered. He spoke on one of them. Near the end, they say memory fades. But if I mold it right, the silence stays forever. It didn't. Thanks to Mallory, the silence was broken. The devil on Dunbar Street had a name. And he would never hurt anyone again.